Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm Becky Sampson, your host. You might notice that I'm wearing the same thing in my last one. I've had a double dose today, and I'm really excited about where we're going, and what we're doing is providing you education. Knowledge is power. That's what I always say. And I want to bring experts onto the podcast, or I am bringing experts onto the podcast that are able to help you navigate through that legal process. So today, our guest is Jill Kaufman. She isn't your average divorce coach. She's a licensed therapist, certified mediator, co-parenting expert, and parenting educator who's been helping families rebuild for over 2 decades. After going through her own gut-wrenching divorce, Jill made it her mission to help others do it better, with less damage, more dignity, and clear path forward. She's an author of I'm Getting Divorced, Now What? Creator of the Thriving Through Divorce program and founder of the Princeton Parenting and Counseling Center, where she's taught thousands of parents how to calm the chaos and co-parent with compassion. What makes Jill different? She blends therapy level depth with real world strategy, helping parents handle emotional landmines and legal logistics at the same time. She's trained in positive discipline, teaches the Redirecting Children Behavior program, and even earned awards for substance abuse prevention and community education in Princeton, New Jersey. She believes divorce doesn't have to destroy you. It can actually be a doorway to make you stronger, healthier version of yourself and your family. So she's a perfect match to be on the Divorcing Strong. So let's welcome Jill to the show. Here we go. There we go. Welcome, Jill. Thank you so much. And I have to tell people, you were one of the first people in this space, in this divorce space, that I met, and you immediately reached out and was like, hey, I can help, and I really, really, really appreciate that. So welcome. And so tell everybody kind of what your backstory is, what got you in here. I know you probably have a lot of similar things, like your crazy story that brought you to here, but go ahead and tell everybody about that.
Yeah. Well, so I started out in finance when I first started working. And it was definitely not for me. I had my kids, and then I started teaching these parenting classes, and I had a very spirited kid, one of my 3 kids. So like it helped me parent my kid so much.
Mm-hmm.
But people kept asking me, like, can I work with you? And at that time I wasn't a therapist.
Yeah.
So I went back for my master's in social work, and I became a therapist. And when I was going through my divorce, I thought, I'm a therapist. I should be able to handle this. And like, I should know how to behave. And I did everything wrong. It was horrible.
Wow.
It was just so many mistakes. And
why do you think that was the case for you?
Well, I mean, because I was feeling so guilty. I was so worried about my children. I'd been thinking about divorce for so long, like we were in counseling for over 4 years. I think it was more than 4 years. We had 3 different therapists.
Wow.
We really tried to make it work. And I just, I didn't know how to manage the emotional part of it when it got messy. It did get messy. And I hired an attorney, and the attorney told me, I just kind of listened to, and I didn't have any other friends who were going through it. So that was really hard for me because it was so isolating, because if you don't go through this, you really don't get what this is about. So that was just, there were so many things going on at the time. And I had lost, I had two brothers that passed away. My dad passed away. So it was just me and my mom. So I didn't have this
Wow.
big family, support. I had lots of
Yeah.
friends, but again, they didn't get what I was going through. So it was just really difficult.
Yeah. And I can only imagine there's a lot of people that are listening that can relate, maybe not the very specifics, but knowing that when you hit with something like divorce, like who do you turn to? And when you don't have anybody that has been through it, and a lot of people do nowadays, but you have to be really careful who you take advice from, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion about what to do.
Yeah. You can get bad advice.
So you reached out to an attorney, and what happened?
And I thought that's what you do. I was just doing what I was thinking was the right thing. And my my spouse at the time was like, well, if you have an attorney, I have to get an attorney. And so we both had attorneys that were talking to each other, and we weren't supposed to talk to each other. It was not ideal. And so
okay, can I just talk you? Wait, just right there. Like we've been it. One of the things that we came out on one of my podcasts the other day is like, before you even get an attorney involved, there's a lot of different options, right? Like a mediator or therapist or things like that to be able to negotiate through some of those things. And so I love that you brought up that was a mistake, that you feel that was a mistake. I should say, I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but that's immediately where you went to go get an attorney. And then that other person goes on defense. And so that's a little bit more of an aggressive move, but yes, and that's more costly.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to have someone representing you when you don't have to have someone representing you when you're going through divorce, but you think that you do.
Yep.
And then they do all the talking, they do all the communicating, and you're paying for everything that they're doing.
You lose
and
your voice.
So, you really have to know how to manage that. It's much better when you know, but there weren't a lot of divorce coaches. This was in 2012 when I went through mine.
Oh yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of information. There's a lot more information out there now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that as the more and more I dive into it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot more resources than most people even have any clue that are out there. And all these divorce coaches and therapists and people with resources are like, how do I reach the people that need it? Right.
Right.
So did you get your degree in therapy after your divorce? Is that what you said?
No, before. I was a therapist.
Okay. That's right.
I graduated from my master's in 2007. So I was before. So I was working as a therapist, and then I went through divorce, and it was terrible because I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, and I would my clothes were hanging off of me. My clients were thinking, they were like, are you okay? I'm sitting there doing therapy, and they're like, you look like you're not well.
You're withering away.
Yes. It was bad.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's right. You had said that you were a therapist and didn't have the right answers. So, I mean, it was kind of difficult. So at what point, what was that turning point that you were like, you know what, I need to help people through this process? Was that long after your divorce or during your divorce? Was that that moment?
So during my divorce, my attorney was advising me on the financial piece of what I should do. And I had a financial background, so I knew she was not giving me the right advice. And I actually came up with a solution to settle my divorce myself. I went to my ex-husband at the time. He was my husband. And I said, I will agree to everything if you agree to this.
Yeah.
And he said, yes. So we both told our attorneys that we're in agreement, and we settled our divorce. But that was after months and months and months of arguing, going back and forth. And so, after the dust settled, not right away, because, there's a lot to go through right away. But after the dust settled, I was like, that I knew more about my ex. I knew more about the situation than my attorney did.
Yeah.
And I can help others understand how to use their attorneys, how to do this differently. And so it was 2017, I started doing coaching, after I was trained. And, I I was helping people do what I needed someone to help me with, really.
Mhm.
And I got certified as a mediator, so I'm a certified divorce mediator. And I really dove right in to helping people as they go through divorce.
Yeah, so it was through your experience. I also really love that you said, "Hey, you know what? We both have attorneys, but there's nothing stopping us from having a conversation together." Because I think sometimes people feel like you can't just pick up the phone and have a conversation. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes when you get an attorney, you kind of lose your voice. And it's very important to advocate for yourself. So I love that you did that. You took the bull by the horns, and you also, it sounds like you found out what was important to him. And as a trained mediator, you know that's like the base part of negotiations, is to know what's important to them and what's important to you, and how do you come to the middle.
Exactly. That's the best thing that you could know when you're negotiating, is what's important to the other person. And your attorney doesn't know that. So if you
Right.
don't tell them, they're not going to know. And the thing is, you do know your spouse better than anybody else. So
Yes.
even if you think you don't know, you can figure it out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you really are, I mean, even if you have an attorney, you still know your case way better than they'll ever know it, because you've lived it.
Right.
So yeah, that's very, very important. So you do mention also in your practice, actually in your practice where you work with the children and the co-parenting, talk a little bit about that, and what are some of the challenges that you see, and what advice would you give people if they're dealing with a co-parenting issue?
Yeah. I mean, so I do co-parenting counseling, where I'm normally working with the parents.
Mhm.
I sometimes do family counseling too, but it's more working with the parents. And what I see are people who um, don't realize how much damage they're doing to their kids by
Yeah.
not getting along.
Yep.
And they've done research and compared families who are intact to families who are divorced, and the big difference isn't whether or not they've been divorced. The big difference is the relationship with the parents, in children's outcomes. So if you can maintain a respectful relationship, and you don't have to be best friends, but you have to be respectful to each other, even if your ex is not being respectful to you, you do your part to be respectful and respond in an appropriate way, which is really hard, by the way. This
Yes.
is not an easy task, but like you have to do everything you can to protect your children, and and having a good relationship with them is one thing you can do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that everyone talks about putting their kids first. But you've seen what really happens behind that scenes. Like, what's one of the biggest myths about co-parenting that you wish every divorced parent could unlearn?
Well, I think a lot of people think that the relationship's going to be different now that you're going through divorce,
Yeah.
that you're going to get along and you're going to be respectful. I
Yeah.
mean, the issues that people had when you were married don't go away.
Right.
Those same issues of not communicating, or having a temper, or being difficult, and inflexible, that doesn't go away when you're getting divorced and you're dealing with someone as a co-parent. So you have to adjust your expectations
Yeah.
to be realistic to the person that you're co-parenting with. Occasionally things will be really better because maybe it was just the situation that was the problem. But in most cases, they're still going to have those traits. And don't be surprised every time they do something that is similar to things that they did when you were married. The difference is you're not married to them anymore. You're
Right.
not living with them anymore. You don't have to deal with them all the time. So a lot of times people will have these reactions that go back to when they were married, but they don't recognize that it's not the same relationship. They can say whatever they want, and it doesn't have the same power. You have so much more independence and detachment from the person than you realize, and that's where the work on yourself can be done.
Yeah, it's interesting. Co-parenting, though. I mean, like when you've got, now that you're separated, right? And this other person is parenting different than you're parenting now. And it might have been that way when you were together. What advice do you give people to how to navigate? I mean, those poor kids are just, for instance, dad gives them everything, right? And then they come back and they've got rules at your house or something like that. How do they navigate that? Or how do you
So
help
you
them?
have no control over what goes on in the other house.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that people don't realize. They're like, well, if I talk to them, maybe they will change. You know what? I mean, you can try to have a conversation, but
Yeah.
most cases they're going to do what they're going to do. So you have to accept the reality that you don't have the control. You only have the control when they're at your house. And if you have 50-50 custody, that's a good chunk of time, right? So the people who are like, well, they don't support them in the way that I support them, that might be true, but 50% of the time is a lot of influence that
Yeah.
you have on your children.
Yep.
And so you make that 50% time
Worth it.
and make it count and make it so that your kids get all that you can give them during that time. I mean, I've had clients who are co-parenting with someone who was abusive and are, somewhat abusive to children. And
Right.
you have to hand those children over to that
I
other person.
know.
And there is nothing in in many situations, there's not much you can do. But I want to tell people that, like, other than abusive situations, if they're just not as good a parent as you, if they're not as understanding for children, that's okay. Kids can be okay with one really supportive, good parent, and they get things from the other relationship that are different than what they
Right.
get from your relationship. So, it's okay that they're not doing what you're doing. Kids can really be okay.
Well, and I think it's important to realize that it's their journey too. I mean, these kids, like you said, we can't control what the other person does, but we can also help ground them when they're in our presence. You know what I mean? If that's something that's important to you with your kids, is give them a good experience so they can tell the difference and they get to connect the dots. Because
And they do.
Yeah. Kids are really smart and they're resilient, right?
Yeah.
I know you actually raised 3 of your kids while you were rebuilding your life, right?
Yes.
So what was something that your children taught you about healing after divorce that you now teach your clients?
Oh gosh. My kids taught me that when they are emotional and when they say things because they're feeling things, not to take it too personally,
Yeah.
because they're struggling and they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with, and that you're the safe person, so you're the person that they can take things out on. And it's hard when you're going through divorce or when you're divorced and your child says something mean or disrespectful or hurtful. And there are times when my oldest child was, already going to college when we were going through this. And there were some times where there were several months where I just stayed away because he had so much anger.
Yeah.
I was in touch with him, but not as much as I would normally be. And that's okay. You need space sometimes from your kids, and and they come back and they get older and they get more mature, and now I have really incredible relationships with all 3 of my kids. And it took a long time to get there. And just be patient with them and don't take it personally and let certain things go.
Yeah. I say that all the time, trust the process, right? Because they're processing. Exactly. I mean, you've got time to process. The kids are processing, and ultimately they have their own choice to believe what they believe or connect whatever dots, and they have agency to decide to have those relationships or not. And especially, I think I was never able to have children. Jill, I don't know if you know my story, but I had 3 miscarriages my first marriage, and then my second marriage wasn't an option, and now too old. However, coming into a family where they have children, I think it's super respectful, even after divorce, because we're talking about thriving after divorce, but having the respect and letting those kids, not pushing yourself. I really don't push myself into their lives. I invite them, and I'll meet them wherever they are. But I definitely don't push myself into their lives. I don't think that builds trust. And I think they respect that, at least from my experience. What have you experienced on your side?
So I have 3 stepchildren in addition to my 3 children, and it is a difficult relationship to manage and like figure that all out, because your stepchildren have parents that are very different parenting styles than yours, and you don't really have I can't really say a lot. But I'm like a parent educator and a therapist. So it's very hard for me not to say like, well, you maybe shouldn't do that, or you should do that. So like,
It's messy.
That's really challenging for me to manage that. You probably are better than I.
Well, I mean, I'm blessed with a mother that she doesn't get very involved in our family's business. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, you're going to raise your kids the way you're going to raise them. I'm here to love you. And so I kind of take more of that stance where, and I don't need approval. Do you know what I mean? And so, I just love, I think it's so important to be able to just love people where they're at. Is it hard? Because I want to be able to have a really close relationship, and I want to respect them. But in the end, everybody has their own agency.
Yeah.
And I will say that is something, when I used to do divorce or dating coaching, when I would help people in relationships, blending 2 families together is very challenging.
Oh my gosh.
Especially if you have teenagers about the same age, and then they don't like each other. And then you're like, okay, is this relationship supposed to be working? Like, do I still go with my relationship even though my kids don't like each other? There's just so many complications to that. And that's an individual thing for everybody,
Yeah. Well, luckily we lived in separate states, very far apart. So we never raised our kids together, which I think was really good for both of our families. And but I can imagine that. And I've worked with people who have that blended family, and it's complicated. But if you're committed to the relationship, and I do marriage counseling too. So like, if you're committed to that relationship and that's the basis for the family, that helps with, everybody else can kind of do their thing. And then the relationship is solid and stable.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that you really talk about is rewriting the divorce narrative. Like, you've seen a lot of families transform through this process. Like, what's one success story that still gives you kind of chills, where a family came out stronger together than they were before they got divorced?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. But I guess I'm trying to think of one that stands out. I mean, when I see people who really aren't doing well in a marriage, and they're struggling, and there's betrayal, or there's there's something that really is not fixable in the marriage, and then they've put everything aside for the kids. And I have a client that I'm thinking of, and they have such a richer life. They have each other as partners, and like all family events, everybody comes, and it's never an issue. It's not about them. It's about the family, and it's about, really looking at it as this is a gift, for them, because they don't just have the 2 parents who are close. They now have, each of the parents have significant others, and, everybody does support each other. I mean, that's really the ideal, and I've seen it happen. And everybody has to do what works for them. So that's not the ideal thing for everyone. Like, some people have separate situations where they celebrate everything separately, and that's okay too. But I mean, I look at my own situation where we were high conflict. And now, like, I just called my ex this week because one of our children are having some issues,
Yeah.
and we both talked very, very nicely. We get along, and we work together to kind of solve something that was going on with our adult child,
Yeah.
and that is really something I feel proud of. And I feel like, we've worked hard to get there.
Well, and that's a huge tribute to you and the work that you've done in that relationship, and being able to put aside differences over the year. And I think that time is a very good thing for people. Once you kind of get away from all the conflict, then you can kind of be more rational, especially if they go on with their life and you go on with your life, and really you go back to, okay, what's the best interest of the children? My second husband, you made me think of my second husband. When we first started dating, he was 18. He is 18 years older than I am. And he was divorced from his first wife for 20 years. And his kids, still for that 20 years, they could not be in the same room and with each other. And the kids were grateful that I came into the picture, because they're like, wow, we actually can have our parents at these events together. And I just thought, man, that is just such a waste of time. And I get everybody's in different places, but it's like, for the sake of the kids, because they're adult children, but you could see how it was really affecting them, going, oh, we have to have all these different activities for the mom, and we have to have everything for the dad. But if we could have the overall feeling like, okay, eventually let's like improve, what are the bridges that we can build instead of the walls? Like, how do we communicate? I mean, it may take a few years, it may take longer than that. But eventually work towards going, look, let's be in the same room so that we can, for our kids' sake, not necessarily for ours. Can we put everything aside so we're here for them?
Yeah. I mean, if people are doing that for 20 years, that's really too bad.
It's
because
extreme.
it really does impact everybody, the kids, grandkids, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
you're impacting generations
Yep.
of your family. And, it really does need to be something where you can try to put your own feelings aside and work through them, and be able to be in the same room, because you don't have to be best friends. No way. But you're going to have to be in the same room with them at some
Right.
point.
Right. And it's interesting, because even the daughter-in-law came to me and she's like, Becky, I got my degree in psychology because I could not understand him. You know what I mean? I wanted to understand him better.
Right.
And anyway, that was a very high conflict divorce for me. And it taught me everything I know now and has given me a career of helping people through the process. So I'm grateful for it. But I think that kind of goes back to flipping the script of how you choose to look at your divorce, because you literally have a choice whether you're going to make you stronger through it, better, and not bitter. I know that that's a very cliche thing to say, but I knew that for some reason, me going through the difficulty that I went through, and it sounds like you were the same way, that, I'm going to take this and build on it, right? To be able to be in more service to other people. And that really is, we talk about the thriving through divorce. Like, that's one of the things that you talk a lot about. But what does thriving really mean to you?
So thriving means looking, especially when you're going through the divorce, looking to your post-divorce life and recognizing what you want and taking the steps that you need to take to get there. So it's learning from learning from your marriage, learning from your divorce, learning from your experiences, and taking what you've learned and doing as much as you can to change yourself. Because if you don't, you're going to repeat the pattern.
Yep.
And you're going to get into a relationship that is not good, in your next relationship, and nobody wants that. So really thriving means, living your life to the fullest that you can. And so whether that is, healing from everything that you've been through, and then opening yourself up to happiness and joy, and opening yourself up to, all the potential of what your future can bring. Because a lot of people just look at divorce and see all the negatives, but
Yeah.
there's so many positives that come. Your children become more like self-sufficient and independent. They learn. I mean, two of my kids have been in relationships for over 7 years.
Mm.
Before, they're not engaged or married, so they are being very careful. I was dating my ex for 10 months when I got engaged.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
That was just not, not a smart thing for anybody. And like, they have a totally different understanding of what that decision to marry someone is. And I think, you're teaching your children and you're learning yourself so many wonderful things as you go through this process.
Yeah. And so here's the follow-up question to that is that like when you work with people, how does someone know when they've crossed that line from surviving to thriving?
I think it can't happen until you're actually, legally divorced, because there's so much stress and anxiety and worry and conflict potentially in that process. So, after you're divorced, you've signed the papers and you're moving forward. That's when the healing really starts. I mean, you can heal. I encourage people to heal the whole way, but there's still so much,
energetic
going on. Yeah.
You're energetically tied. And once that divorce is final and you hear it, like you see it on paper, you're like,
yeah.
Okay. I mean, now it's that you can breathe a little bit and now you've got some, to spring forward,
Yeah. And then when you are thriving and, not surviving anymore is when you are really happy in your life and you're saying that this is what I wanted my life to be like. And I'm here, and life isn't perfect. Of course not. But like, you find happiness every day and you feel, like you have turned a corner on the grief and the struggle of all that pain from what you're healing from.
Yeah. I know, Jill, you've done this for a long time. When you work with people, who's like your ideal, you work with people all throughout the United States. Is that correct?
Yep. In Canada.
Okay.
Yep.
And what would be I always love to ask this question but who's your ideal client? Like, who do you really, really love to work with? And what stage do you like to work with them?
Well, ideally, I like to get them right when they're starting out their divorce, because then they don't make all the mistakes that you could make. But I work with people in the middle of their divorce too, or even just thinking about. But my ideal client is a parent I really mostly work with people who have children, and who are, there's some kind of struggle there, so it's more high conflict than people won't need me really if it's not high conflict. That's really who I work with.
It sounds like it's very rewarding because if you can give them power and the tools that they need to be able to navigate that, then they really can thrive after divorce.
It's amazing to see the change in just the way they feel about themselves, the confidence that they have. They come and start working with me and they're so fearful and worried and not really who they really are. And then they just like become really happy, confident, totally different people. It's amazing.
I know. I love that transformation. I really do. And it makes me so sad when I hear stories over and over and over with people who are like, oh man, I wish I would have known you or knew this and it's just like, it's better to reach out for the support and help to begin with. And I don't know if you found this either, but it's usually through therapists or family and friends that refer people to me even, instead of the person that's actually going through the divorce, because they just don't know what they don't know at that point. And the friends are like, dude, you need somebody to help. like, and they see somebody, they're like, okay, you need to talk to Jill, or you need to talk to Becky, or whatever. Yeah. And it is very, very rewarding. It is a heavy space. And I just want to thank you. I always thank my guests, because I just know sometimes it can be frustrating and difficult. However, on the other side, when people are open to being coached and into therapy, and if they're willing to do the work, it's amazing the miracles that are on the other side of it. So yes. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for coming on today. You are just a bright light in this space. And again, I want to thank you for being so kind to me when I first got into this industry, and you were just like, yeah, you need to talk to this person, this person, this person. You have such an open heart, a giving heart when it comes to this space. So
well, you are a pleasure to connect, because your energy and your experience and everything that you do has helped so many people. So I appreciate you.
Well, absolutely. Well, reach out to Jill. I put her website on there, but you're also going to have it in the show notes. So make sure you reach out. And do you do consultations, or how do you?
I do free consultations.
Okay, awesome. And reach out to her and see if it's the right fit for what you're going through. So thanks so much, Jill. Hold on just 1 second. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today with Jill Kaufman, the divorce coach and therapist. We are just grateful to be able to do these shows every week and connect with amazing professionals to help you navigate through divorce. I'm again your host, Becky Sampson of the Divorce Strong podcast, and we will see you next time. Stay strong. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.